My twin died years ago, but I just saw him. I was born an identical twin. My sister and I looked so much alike that people often did a double take when they saw us together. We were also extremely close. We shared a lot of the same interests, and we spent most of our free time together. So when she died in a car accident 7 years ago, it felt like half of me had died along with her. It wasn't long after her death that I began seeing a therapist to help me cope. It must have been some random guy who just happened to look like my sister's twin. Scared of what? Of what if it really was my sister? Would I be able to handle seeing her again after all this time? I went home that night and told my boyfriend what had happened. I still wasn't sure if I believed it was really my sister. I just had this nagging feeling that something wasn't right. My boyfriend was very supportive, and he told me that if I felt it in my heart that it was my sister, then I should go after her. She mouthed the words, "I'll explain later," and hurried over to the man. The man shook his head. "No, I don't." "Well, maybe you can take a look at these photos. And I know she was an only child, but still, how could there be another person who looks exactly like her?" My friend handed him the photos from the security footage. The man's eyes widened as he looked at them. "Oh my God," he breathed. I do look like him." She turned around and looked at me expectantly. "Can I get your number?" I asked. She handed it to me and said, "Call me." Then she turned and walked away without another word. She furrowed her brows in confusion. Why?" "Because I think I might know you from somewhere," I said. Well, by that point, I was so overwhelmed with the shock of realizing there was another person out there who looked exactly like her that I could unthink straight. She picked up on the second ring, and I could hear the smile in her voice as she said hello. "Hey," I said. She was real. She was alive and well, living just a few towns away. All those years of grief, all those tears, it was worth it, because now I have a chance to make new memories with my sister. I was wondering if maybe we could get together sometime." There was a beat of silence, and then she said, "Yeah, sure. And why not?" "Great," I said. "How about tomorrow afternoon?" "Sounds good," she replied. "I'll see you then." I'd spent the last 7 years believing that she was dead. The thought that she could still be alive and out there somewhere was too much for me to process. "Excuse me," she said to him. "I'm so sorry to bother you, but I need to ask you a few questions." The man looked at her suspiciously. "What questions?" he asked. "It's nothing really important," she said. As they were talking, I couldn't help but sneak another glance at him. Her eyes widened when she saw me, and she gasped. "You," she exclaimed. "Do I know you?" I asked her, but she shook her head. "No, I don't think so. I'm sorry. Are you sure you're okay?" "You seem a little dazed." I blinked rapidly, trying to shake off the shock. Yeah, I'm fine," I lied. "I just haven't had my coffee yet." "I'm sorry to bother you, but I have to get going now. It was nice seeing you." And that's when I saw it. On his left wrist, there was a small beauty mark, identical to the one my sister had. I was stunned. Could this really be my sister? "We just need to ask you a few questions about a theft that happened here a few weeks ago." She explained that there had been a theft from a person and that the thief looked exactly like him. The man's face paled. "Tea theft," he stammered. I don't know what you're talking about," I said. I owed it to both me and to her. I appreciated his support, but I couldn't help but feel like he only said that to appease me. I know he was trying to be a good boyfriend, but I could tell he was hoping I wouldn't actually go after this look-alike. I hadn't even accepted that she was dead yet, but I didn't see him anywhere. I was disappointed, but I tried to tell myself that it probably was just some random guy who looked like my sister. The thought that she could still be out there somewhere alive was too much for me to bear. Well, the odds are actually quite high because there are millions of people who could fit that description. But for me, it wasn't some random guy. I know it sounds crazy, but I just knew it was my sister. I didn't want to be alone if I saw him. To my surprise, he was there in the same aisle where I'd seen him the first time. My heart skipped a beat when I saw him. I tried to calm myself down, took a deep breath, and walked over to him. I couldn't explain it, but I could feel it in my gut. "Hi, do you need something?" he asked. I stared at him for a moment, searching his face for any resemblance to my sister. But other than the fact that he had the same green eyes, I didn't see anything that looked like her. I was about to tell him I was sorry for bothering him when my friend leaned over and whispered, "That's him. That's the guy from the security footage. I still miss her every single day. And I don't think that will ever change." I really struggled in the beginning, but eventually things started to look up. I got a job, made new friends, and even found a boyfriend who I really liked. I didn't know if I'd ever be able to love someone again, but he proved to be the exception. Almost 7 years later, we're still together. Although there are still some tough days, I feel like I'm finally starting to heal. I know some people think it's weird to still be grieving after all this time, but grief doesn't have a timetable. I wasn't ready to move on. I was at the grocery store when I saw him. He looked exactly like my sister. I couldn't believe my eyes. I stood there staring at him the entire time he shopped, unable to tear my gaze away from him. He was about my sister's height and build. He had the same brown hair and green eyes. And then there was the small beauty mark she had on her left wrist. It was identical to the one on his left wrist. A few months after her death, I moved out of my parents' house to try and make a fresh start somewhere else. Then last week, something happened that completely shattered the progress I'd made. I know what you're probably thinking. What are the odds? By the time he'd finished shopping, I'd regained my composure and I wanted to approach him, but I was scared. So I stopped myself and I decided to let it go. The next time I went to the grocery store, I purposely went at the same time he'd been there in hopes of seeing him again. Then yesterday I went back again, and this time I brought a friend with me, just in case. He was reaching for a can of spaghetti. When I tapped him on the shoulder, he turned around and smiled at me. What security footage? When I turned to my friend, I saw a wild look on her face. Okay, my friend said slowly. But you do know how the victim described the thief, right? Do you know how he looked? What does that even mean? Does this mean he really is my sister's twin? How could this be possible? He told my friend that he didn't live far away and that he'd be willing to come with her to the police station to give a statement. As I stared at her, she finished talking with my friend and turned to me. She smiled politely and turned to leave. Wait, I called after her. For a moment she hesitated. Then she smiled and wrote her number on a piece of paper. I know what you're probably thinking. Why didn't I just ask her if she was my sister? When I got home that night, I immediately called her. And that's when I realized that my sister wasn't just a memory.